Hello YouTube, it is the Covinator here doing another tutorial on the A-10C Warthog in DCS World. If you happen to miss any of my previous tutorials, I highly recommend you go and watch them first, as this is the fourth video in a series where each video builds upon the knowledge of the previous one. In this tutorial we're going to be covering aircraft startup procedures, in particular flight preparation, which is basically a procedure that ensures that all the levers, switches, and dials in the aircraft are in their normal off or set as desired positions. It's a topic that I often see as missed in other tutorials, but it really is an important part of starting any aircraft, and it's a good habit to get into. For this mission we're going to be using the Free Flight Black Sea ramp start mission for the tutorial if you wish to follow along, or perhaps practice afterwards. And just like in the real aircraft, to help us do this, we'll be learning a flow that will allow us to do the flight preparation check in a logical and efficient manner. Now the flow I'm going to describe is just one that I use, and once mastered it only takes about 30 seconds to complete. Once you understand the flow, you may wish to modify it or tweak it a little bit, maybe even use a different flow that works for you. There really is no right or wrong way as long as the procedure is completed correctly. The flow that I use basically starts with the left console and does a clockwise sweep to the right console to ensure that the aircraft is set up properly. So starting with the left console, I always start with the emergency panel, which is very easy to find. It's black and yellow striped, and I start with the flaps emergency retract, basically making sure that that is in the aft position and that manual reversion is set to normal, and then the aileron emergency and elevator emergency disc gate switches, that those switches are centered, that the speed brake emergency retract is in the aft position, and that emergency override pitch is set to normal. And then I move inboard to these radios, just making sure that these frequency mode dials and function dials are set to off position, not transmit and receive. And then moving a little forward, you got two switches. You got the EAC and the attitude to make sure that that is off and disengaged, and then the IFF panel there is not implemented in the sim, so we don't need to worry about that. And then in the throttle panel, I make sure that flaps are up, that the APU is off, and that the motors are in their normal positions and the fuel flow is normal, and I make sure that on SAS that all my switches are off. And then moving forward, making sure the HARS override set to normal, that the refuel status indicator is set, that NVIS is off, and then moving forward into the fuel panel, just basically making sure all these switches are off. You should be seeing a pattern at this point. If the switch is in the aft position, it's usually off or normal. I also make sure the aerial refuel slip control lever is set, and landing gear is down, and then landing lights are off, anti-skids off, and then I look at the armament control panel, basically making sure that all these switches are in safe or off position, in which they are. The attitude standby indicator is caged to make sure the auxiliary landing gear handle is pushed in. Of course, our left MCD is off, our jettison button is out, our fire T pull handles are all pushed in, and we have our accelerometer, which will set. Compass looks good. Then moving over towards the right part of the front console, make sure the fire extinguisher switch is centered, making sure that the right MFCD, of course, it is off. And we're kind of moving our way to the right console. You can see that this check goes pretty quickly. You're looking at the countermeasures panel here, making sure that the dial is set to off. All the dispenser switches are off. Then we're going to the electrical power panel, making sure that all these switches are off for the electrical bus. Then we're moving towards the more into the right console, past the CDU, basically making sure that IGE and CDU is off, page set to other, steer point set to mission. And then we're moving outboard a little bit into the environmental panel, Well, actually, we'll do the radios. Make sure that ILS, TAC CAN. You actually probably won't use HARS, but just making sure that those dials are set to off, and then we'll do the lights. That's usually how I do it, just making sure that all those lights are basically set as desired. That's going to depend on what type of mission you're flying and what time of day. If you're flying a night mission, you may want to adjust those accordingly. So that's basically it. That covers my flow on the flight preparation of the A-10. This bird is set up properly. The next step would be to go ahead and get it started, which I will cover in the next video. If you happen to have any questions or comments or feedback, please let me know. Don't forget to like or subscribe. It really does mean a lot. And I hope you liked this video. Thanks so much for watching. This is the Covenator signing off.